Greetings nerds and virgins, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going through the best rivalries in UFC history, but before we start, can you like and subscribe? I'm getting views, but I want some subscribers as well since I'm building a community here. So please subscribe to hop on the shadow train. Choo choo! Hop on the shadow train. But yeah, whether driven by genuine trash talk or fueled by intense personal animosity, rivalries in MMA elevate the thrill of prize fighting to another level in terms of selling thousands of tickets, generating millions of pay-per-view revenue, and producing a ton of violence and drama. Here are the top 10 UFC rivalries that did exactly that. First up, we got the rivalry between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, which kicked off at UFC 178 in 2014 and had since then has had its ups and downs. The first fight, the two took place at featherweight when the Irishman was on a supersonic rise to stardom thanks to his ruthless trash talking backed up by his performances inside the cage. Against Poirier, McGregor's mental warfare was top notch as well, as he infuriated the American to the point of no return. McGregor got under Poirier's skin and then through his skull, earning a first round TKO. Fast forward 7 years later to UFC 257, McGregor was nicer than usual, and Poirier was miles ahead in terms of skill, which is why the diamond shined bright like a diamond and exacted his revenge with a second round knockout. The win set the stage for their trilogy fight at UFC 264, where Poirier got a lucky win against McGregor after McGregor broke his leg. So yeah, McGregor should have won that rivalry, but it ain't over, we'll see. But the next rivalry we got that's hot, we got McGregor versus Nate Diaz. It's one of the hottest rivalries in MMA history. It all kicked off in 2016 at UFC 196 when Nate Diaz stepped in on short notice to replace Rafael dos Anjos, who had to pull out of his lightweight title defense against the notorious one due to injury. With McGregor having a full camp and Diaz stepping in on a few days' notice, the Irishman was a heavy favorite to secure a knockout. The odds were stacked high against Diaz, but when has the Stockton native ever cared about that? Being the fast starter that he is, McGregor came out guns blazing and tagged Diaz time and time again, dropping him twice, but he failed to put the American out of there, so in desperate attempts to do so, he ran out of gas. The result? By round 2, McGregor was gasping for air, barely being able to stand on his feet, and in desperation he shot for a takedown, only to be choked out moments later. McGregor's defeat ignited a fierce drive for revenge, which ultimately led to a blockbuster rematch at UFC 202, where McGregor narrowly clinched a victory by majority decision, settling the score just enough to keep their rivalry burning. The trilogy is still on the cards, but will it ever happen? McGregor certainly wants it, just as much as he wants to punch a hole in Khabib Nurmagomedov's head. McGregor and Khabib's story is as personal as it gets. Once buddies, their friendship fell apart when the Dublin native jumped the line to fight Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title, a shot Khabib felt he deserved. Things got even more messier when it came out that the UFC had been using Khabib to pressure McGregor during contract talks. Feeling betrayed, Khabib began to publicly taunt McGregor, calling him a chicken. The feud escalated when Artem Lobov, one of McGregor's close friends at that time, badmouthed Khabib in an interview, and Khabib responded by showing up with his crew and slapping Lobov at a hotel lobby, which only fueled the champ's rage. Seething with anger, McGregor hopped on a private jet and flew to New York. There, he and his team attacked a bus carrying Khabib and other fighters, a moment that became one of the ugliest in UFC history. After the incident, Khabib challenged McGregor to a showdown, which finally happened at UFC 229. The lead up to the fight was nasty, with McGregor unleashing personal insults at Khabib during the press conference. In the octagon, Khabib showed exactly how he likes to do the talking. the Eagle clawed into McGregor with ground and pound before locking in a tight rear naked choke in the 4th round. Khabib then flew out of the cage and went after Dylan Danis, one of McGregor's cornermen who had supposedly been talking a ton of smack about the champ and has been talking shit outside the cage while they were fighting as well. The two UFC legends are still blood rivals to this day. Speaking of which, John Jones and Daniel Cormier come to mind. Interestingly, the feud started backstage at UFC in 2010 at a UFC event, when Jones made a playful dig at Cormier's wrestling skills. That offhand comment ignited a fire that would burn for years. Things heated up further when they crossed paths in the light heavyweight division for the ultimate prize, the UFC 205-pounder belt, in 2014. The hatred reached to the boiling point during a chaotic face-off after the UFC 178 press conference, which led to an explosive brawl. Although an injury postponed their first scheduled fight, Jones defended his title in a pretty dominant performance, but also a close decision as well. A few months later, Jones was stripped of his belt after a hit-and-run incident, and Cormier claimed the title by defeating Anthony Johnson. The rivalry reignited when Jones and Cormier fought again at UFC 214 in 2017, where John Bone Jones reclaimed the belt via TKO victory. After the fight, an emotionally crushed Cormier initially downplayed the rivalry, admitting the fact that if you lose to the same man twice, then it isn't no rivalry. Good luck telling that to Quinton Rampage Jackson, who hated Wanderlei Silva enough to fight him 3 times. The rivalry between the two MMA phenoms unfolded through 3 brutal encounters across 2 different promotions, Pride and the UFC. Their saga began in Pride, where Silva bested Jackson in both their first 2 clashes. At Pride Final Conflict 2003, Silva delivered a savage display of Muay Thai, finishing Jackson with a knee that sent him crashing through the ropes. Their rematch in Pride 28 in 2004 saw Silva once again dominating, unleashing his fury on the American and winning a second time. Had Rampage followed Cormier's lead, there wouldn't have been a 3rd fight, but he wanted to put it all on the line for a constellation. The final chapter of their rivalry unfolded at UFC 92, where Jackson finally got his revenge when he knocked out Silva out cold in the first round with a brutal left hook. Now, Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell is another OG rivalry that had a ton of animosity and brutal knockouts. Once close friends and training partners, Ortiz and Liddell's bond shattered when they both set their sights on the UFC light heavyweight title. Liddell had once been Ortiz's right-hand man, but he soon carved his own path and challenged his former ally. The first installment of their trilogy took place at UFC 47 in 2004, where Liddell scored a dramatic 2nd round knockout, but not one to back down. Ortiz bagged a rematch at UFC 66 in 2006, where despite his best efforts, Liddell was simply too otherworldly for him, and the champ won by a 3rd round TKO to retain his title. The rivalry flared up one last time 12 years later in 2018, when Liddell came out of retirement for a trilogy fight under Golden Boy Promotions. This time, Ortiz had the final word, clinching a victory over a washed-up Chuck Liddell with CTE and won by a 1st round knockout. Have some shame, Tito. Come on, man. Now, what Jackson and Ortiz can do, Chael Sonnen can do too, but a little differently. The bad guy had feuds with numerous icons throughout the years, but none stands out like the fights against Anderson Silva. The American turned up the heat on his Brazilian counterpart with his relentless trash talk leading up to both their first and their rematch. Their first encounter at UFC 117 in 2010 saw Chael Sonnen dominating for nearly 5 rounds, taking Silva down repeatedly and controlling him. Just when it looked like Silva might face a shocking defeat, he pulled off one of the most dramatic comebacks in MMA history, catching Chael Sonnen in a triangle choke in the final moments. In the rematch at UFC 148 in 2012, Sonnen again started strong with a takedown, but Silva managed to stay on his feet and counter Chael Sonnen's efforts as the fight progressed. Once the fight was upright, Silva delivered a decisive second round TKO. After the bout, the rivalry turned into mutual respect, and the two have become good friends since, but they're fighters at the end of the day. In 2024, Sonnen and Silva took their rivalry to the boxing ring, and surprisingly, Chael the wrestler fought Silva the striker to a draw. If you know MMA, you know that's a win for Uncle Chael. Now, when it comes to rivalries across different combat sports, the battle between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira stand at the top of the list. The rivalry dates back to their kickboxing days under the Glory banner, where their first clash saw Pereira earn a unanimous decision victory, which was a very controversial, I must say that. Their second kickboxing showdown ended in dramatic fashion, with Pereira delivering the first knockout of Adesanya's career and putting him on a stretcher. That was Adesanya's final kickboxing fight, as he focused all his attention on MMA afterward, entering the UFC and dominating the world's best middleweights to win the 185-pound title. A few years later, Pereira also signed with the UFC and quickly made waves, earning a middleweight title shot with just 3 wins. The two arch rivals met at UFC 281, where Pereira staged a thrilling comeback to knock out Adesanya and claim the middleweight title. Adesanya got his chance for revenge 5 months later at UFC 287, where he was getting completely fucked up, but he scored a decisive second round KO to finally put an end to their fierce rivalry. In Izzy's own words, the one who laughs last laughs the best. So is that the reason why Jorge Masvidal sucker punched Colby Covington on the streets of Miami? The drama between Colby Covington and Jorge Street Judas Masvidal is a classic case of friendship gone wrong. Once training partners at the renowned American top team in South Florida, their relationship took a turn as Covington's brash persona began to grate on everyone, including Masvidal. The tension escalated as Masvidal distanced himself from Covington, especially after ATT's founder Dan Lambert had to implement a zero trash talking policy to manage Covington's relentless verbal assaults on his own teammates. The rift deepened when Covington reportedly refused to pay the longtime striking coach, leading to a definitive split. In 2020, Covington left ATT for MMA Masters. Their rivalry boiled over to the octagon at UFC 272, where Covington claimed victory by a solid decision, but the bad blood didn't end there. In March 2022, Masvidal took the feud to the streets, attacking Covington outside a Miami steakhouse and subsequently facing legal repercussions. Colby is an absolute savage when he's on the mic, and he even rattled Kamaru Usman with a verbal onslaught a couple times. The Usman-Covington rivalry was an intense but fiercely competitive throughout. When Usman and Covington first clashed at UFC 245, it was an all-out war, one of the most thrilling welterweight title bouts ever. Usman emerged victorious with a TKO in the 5th round, famously breaking Covington's jaw quote-unquote in the process. A couple years later, Covington sought a rematch with Usman. Leading up to the fight, Covington talked about Usman's father. They went back and forth. It was crazy. And then, they fought hard. And personally, I thought that fight was a draw. So I think they need to settle it once and for all. I mean, Belal Muhammad is the fucking champion now. So whoever wins out of them should fight Belal Muhammad, because I think personally they both beat that guy. So I hope that happens. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to hop on the Shadow Train. Choo choo, hop on the Shadow Train. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the top.
Yeah, you tried to break me, but you couldn't tear me apart. I've got a fire inside, gonna ignite and restart. I'm rising up higher than before. With every step I take, I'm closing in on the score.